culture kind of replicates itself pretty effectively. And when you get that sort of zero-sum mindset and that older managerial mindset, that's just people like they see that, they think, they see it on TV or whatever, and they think, oh, that's what it means to be a boss. I'm supposed to like yell and be a dick, that sort of thing. And it's just silly, because it's just not how knowledge works. To your point, it's just not how things get done, because it's like 6 or 7, 8% of people are doing that older industrial style thing. And knowledge work is how countries get rich and develop. And knowledge work doesn't work that way. And there's like, to your point, there's just just like so much literature now. And yet leaders can't get over the leadership mindset hurdle to something that is more collaborative, something that is more transparent, something that is more inclusive, of getting, all of the people doing the work, into it. It's just incredibly wasteful.
Hello and Merry Christmas Eve. It's the 24th. It's day 3 in our daily episodes for Christmas week. And today, in my final one-on-one guest interview, I was going to say of the year, that's not quite true, my penultimate guest interview one-on-one episode of the year, because there's one more coming on Wednesday next week. Today, I'll be talking leadership development, learning, mindset, culture, the perils of toxic leadership, and more with my next guest, Simon Holzapfel. He is the co-founder and CFO of LEAF Labs, which is the Lean Education Agile Foundry Laboratory, which is all about helping students and young people develop their skills for the workplace, for the future of work, among other things. And he will explain it much better than I just have in a moment. If you enjoy this episode, please do let me know, leave a rating or a review. And if you would like to get deeper into leadership, expand your knowledge, work on your skills as a leader, or if you're seeking guidance or support with your leadership, then do pay a visit to my website as well. It's on the screen, it's in the show notes, it's leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. There you will find articles, free resources, including my PDF guide to your first steps into leadership. There's a Leadership Heroes quiz, bit of a sci-fi theme to it. So it will help you develop on the kind of leadership that you aspire to, some of the values that you may have. There's also links to book on to my next Leadership Values workshop, which will be in the new year now. You can sign up for my newsletter. And of course, on that homepage, the big green button to come and join the Integrity Leaders online community. More about that at the end of the show. So that link is in the show notes and on the screen. As always, do reach out if you have questions. I would genuinely love to hear from you.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Simon, welcome to Leading with Integrity. Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure having you. And to kick us off, over to you for a little bit, really. Tell us a bit about yourself, your career so far, what you do, why you do it, all of those lovely things.
For sure. Yeah. So I left university and got into secondary education, not ever thinking that sort of being a leader was all that important to me. I really wanted to get young people excited about economics and history, which were my subjects. And I got several years down the road of teaching, and I enjoyed it, but I felt like I had enough understanding of how the classroom worked that I began to get bored and wanted to move into leadership positions. And I found that it was really helpful to my own development that I was in schools where like learning things and moving into leadership is not a highly, political contested thing. So starting in 2007, I had my first real kind of senior leadership position in an organization as the academic director of a boarding school near here. And And I was just in love. I mean, it was such a fun thing to be able to work with a whole bunch of different people, working for the boss. I was the academic director, but just like getting people together, aligning them, developing a vision, that sort of stuff was just incredibly fun. And I think most of your listeners probably have been in organizations where that isn't the case and it's just sort of chaos. And you're like, where's the leadership? What do they want us to do other than work harder, sort of stuff. And so part of actually getting into leadership was this sort of, I don't know, maybe it was arrogant or something, but like I just saw a lot of leaders not being very effective, not being very magnetic, oftentimes just being jerks. And I was like, I think I can do this better, or I can at least make the experience of working in these organizations, jolly, fun, positive, uplifting, that sort of stuff. And then I had an even better fortune to then become the head of the school for about half a dozen years. And then I was just completely burnt out. And so, being a head of school was great. We raised millions of dollars. Again, lots of good stuff. The thing that I found was that, and this was like kind of leadership lesson number one, just because someone is your boss, it doesn't mean that they actually know everything or even know enough to be really useful to you around certain questions. My father I had sort of grown up with a father who was a kind of a public leader of various things. And so I had kind of a good role model. And what I realized is, working for other people is useful up to a point, but when you hit certain walls, you can either like keep pushing or do something else. And I was invited to do something else. So I got involved in sort of two different, it's not two side hustles, but it's two things that are sort of complementary and adjacent. So what I do now is I'm the CFO and I'm one of the co-founders of an organization called LEAF Lab. LEAF Lab is open to anyone who speaks English and has an internet connection on Earth before they get to a professional life. And we show them really kind of the basics of digital business and self-leadership and self-organization. I'm a huge leadership nerd, so I read lots of leadership stuff. What I like about what I'm doing now is you're helping young people learn good habits before they get exposed to toxic leadership, or, they've had maybe minimal exposure, but as a professional, what they learn is, here's how you take complex work and break it down. Here's how you set OKRs. Here's how you talk about problems. Here's how you do risk management in a non-blame based way. And there are a bunch of leaders, frankly, from the UK and from the Isles there who have just been huge mentors to me along the way. So what I do now is sort of versions of that leadership stuff in leadership roles. I have also served in governance positions, that sort of stuff. But mostly what I try to do, and your readers could see this, your listeners could see this on my Substack, is just help people learn that leadership is not magical. There's no like wizardry to it. It's about honesty with yourself and getting good people around you. So that was kind of a long answer to your question, but I hope that gives something of a trajectory.
No, it does. And there's some interesting themes emerging there as well straight away. I agree. I think it's a really fun job to do. If you're lucky enough to get the chance to do it, and I managed to keep it long enough. And I think that sometimes gets lost, doesn't it, in the conversation about leadership. It is a responsibility. It can be a burden, but that doesn't mean it can't also be fun and a really great job to have. So I'm trying to say that more, because I feel like it's important that we say that.
It is.
Yeah, as with all things, it depends on who you're working with, I suppose, doesn't it? Like if you have the wrong team, then maybe not. But
yeah.
And so the point around like leadership in education is interesting to me. There's kind of two things that come out of this quite a lot, because you're not the first leader in education or the first teacher that I've interviewed. And there's kind of two things that I find really interesting about this. The first one is, for a lot of people, the first leader they're going to experience outside of the home is a teacher. And so teaching itself is leadership in a way.
That's a great point.
So I'd love to get your thoughts on that, actually, with your career history.
It's interesting. I had never thought of it that way, but like it kind of like hit me up the side of the head. Yeah, that's such a good point. It really is. It is those teachers. And so as I cast my mind back to those sort of younger grade teachers, they were so influential for just how to be an adult, how to make things happen, how to organize things. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in education, the interesting thing is a lot of people get into classroom teaching. The adults get into classroom teaching mostly because they don't want to actually be around other adults necessarily, and they don't want to have to deal with a lot of that stuff. So being the only adult in a classroom makes leadership, you're kind of the default person for good and for bad. So I think what that's also making me think is, I wonder if there's any sort of like how much leadership training gets into teacher training. And I don't know that world very much, but it does make me wonder.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Yeah. It's, I can certainly empathize with, some adults in some workplaces, definitely. I can see the appeal of teaching from that perspective. Yeah.
Well, and certainly we know that there are leaders who actually act like children. And that's really horrible when you get into that environment.
True. But then also, like, some of the best leaders I've ever been lucky enough to work with, they've not like behaved like children, but they haven't lost that childlike view of certain parts of the world, Not quite innocence, but do you know what I mean?
Well, that's right. So it's a kind of awe, it's wonder, it's being wrapped up in something that's so fascinating and just like makes you want to do stuff and go.
Yeah, so and like whatever the opposite of jaded is, that
right.
That word.
Yes, precisely.
And so, I mean, the other thing around education and academia and leadership roles in those settings, I've heard from others who've spent a lot of time in the academic world that leadership roles in those sort of organizations, nobody really wants to do it and you have to be forced to do it. Is that accurate or not? What do you think?
So my wife's a college professor. She is currently the chair of her department for the second time. She will never do it again. and you're exactly right. So especially sort of at university level, in general, when you're there to advance your career, being a department chair sounds good from the outside, but it's mostly just a lot of administrivia, a lot of herding of cats, a lot of that sort of thing. So it is absolutely true that in academia at the collegiate level, those sort of, at least being a department chair is not awesome. It's more of a duty that somebody has to do that. And it generally rotates within departments, so no one gets stuck with it forever. At least in the States, I'm not sure how that works in other places. But yeah, that's true. And it's interesting because there's this funny self-selection where often the people who most want to be leaders are not necessarily best suited for it, even though they have an interest in it. And I mean, I've lived with someone who her predecessor was exactly the kind of person who makes a department worse, who makes a group of people less than the sum of their parts by virtue of just all the sort of side projects, lack of transparency, you name it, all the anti-patterns that makes organizational life for too many people just drudgery and not fun and not energizing and not awe-inspiring.
Yeah, it's funny. A quote that I roll out quite frequently is, have you heard of Douglas Adams?
Oh, yes. A great author.
Yeah, so there's a quote in one of his books, isn't there, about the galactic president and how the last person who should be allowed to do it is the person who wants to do it, right? I don't know. I think it's funny in the book, but I think in real life it's maybe an oversimplification. I think the real thing of it is why they want to do it. Precisely. And I think a lot of these leaders, in inverted commas, who end up in those positions or who have chased them, the reason they want them is not because they want to be a good leader or because they want to make a difference even a lot of the time. They're usually chasing the paycheck or the status or the ego or whatever it is. And I think that there's such a contrast there to the great leaders that we encounter who are doing the opposite. Like the pay and the status and all that, they don't care about the status. They never really think about it. The pay, they're like, well, all right, I'll take it if I have to. No one says no to the money, right? But they're actually there because of the thing. Whatever the thing is, they want to make that a success.
Yep. And it is. And it's purpose driven. It's service leadership. Servant leaders are the people who make great things happen. The sort of prima donna leaders, it's just about them. The whole thing just gets wrapped around them. And we see this all the time. And yeah, it's unfortunate.
Indeed. So brings me back to what you do now, which I think this is why I think it's so important. You know, I often complain about how leadership is in the workplace, how it's taught or not taught, the development, the training opportunities that are available in most businesses, if it exists at all. It's always after the fact. It's, you were great at that job, now you're going to lead other people doing it, but we're not going to tell you how to do this. You've got to figure it out by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I would so love to see it the other way around, where people are given the skills to do the job before they have to do the job. I complain about it all the time. Like, there's a whole, was it Forbes? Somebody coined that phrase in there around accidental manager, and I can't remember who it was, but
Yes,
it's just, it makes no sense to me. And I always throw like the slightly facetious example, like you wouldn't send a doctor in or a surgeon in to operate if you hadn't taught them how to do it first, would you? So why do we do it in every other workplace? Like, anyway. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and it's a good point, because, you know, because in the case of a surgeon, we can understand it because all the consequences get focused on one body, and we're like, oh, well, that's obviously a bad idea. Where the effects are more diffuse, we're like, oh, well, the hand waving starts. But the danger to the organization can be as lethal as a doctor
100%.
going in to do surgery without having done a residency or training. And we see this all the time. You see it in corporate history, you see it, you know, all over the place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's easy to say it's not the same because nobody's going to die as a result, or there's, you know, there's no life-changing consequences. But then, I don't know, I mean, tell that to companies that build airplanes for a living, or submarines, or control welfare, or anything like that. Like,
for sure.
You know, it's maybe a little bit fuzzier, but it's still there.
Yeah, and I forget where I saw this recently. It was something about health consequences of having, and this, the word toxic, I think, is often very overused today, but I'll use this advisedly. Physical manifestations of a toxic work environment and a toxic boss has been measured. So it's actually not that different from the doctor case that you gave, which is people's bodies show the wear and tear of bad leadership.
Absolutely.
It's spread out, but the net effect is going to be bad. There's going to be harm. There will be legitimate, you know, clear costs in bodies, minds, hearts, and the balance sheet.
Definitely. And even if you don't buy that particular study, I think the connections between things like stress and burnout and toxic leadership are pretty well established by this point.
100%.
And the health effects that those things have, again, like, pretty well established. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like a no-brainer, doesn't it? But
it does. And yet the pattern of non-preparation persists for some reason, because we think it's like some magical thing where Gandalf or Sauron or whoever the leader is, you know, has these, there's something fundamentally different about them. And I just don't believe that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's the born versus made argument again, I suppose, isn't it? Which, again, gets me a little bit frustrated sometimes. It's, I don't know. I think it's partly because that's convenient. And it's a convenient rationale to then not have to spend money on training people. That's what my cynical brain says to me. That's what it is all about, really. But I don't know. Maybe that's unfair.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's, I think that's part of the picture. But also, having worked with enough small and medium-sized companies, a lot of them are just in firefighting mode.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of them, the capacity is not there, or they firefight and don't invest in the long-term leadership capacity of the organization because they just don't understand the aggregate value of real leadership training and practice over time.
Although ironically, I mean, a lot of the small businesses I've encountered over the years, the reason they're always in that firefighting mode is because of the leadership.
Exactly. They keep themselves there. That's exactly right. And so because they can't get out of their way in their short term, they can never clear a path to something sane in the long term. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And there's a fair percentage. I wouldn't like to put a number on it, but there's a fair percentage of people leading those businesses who like it that way. They don't want. They don't want.
I think at least half.
Plan.
Yeah, I think at least half. I mean, that sort of like heroic firefighting thing. And I was certainly guilty of this for the, I don't know, better part of 10 years, where we kind of received this general cultural sense that like the leader is the heroic firefighter who goes, it's like, how did the building start burning before you had to run in? let's just like have things not catch on fire. Then we don't need fire person leadership styles. And yet again, it's not fashionable. And I think you're right, David. A lot of smaller business people are like, hey, this is just cool. This is like, it feels good because you're unquestionably important. And I think one of the hard things about leadership is day to day, minute to minute. It's rare that any given choice is necessarily super clear, and certainly the implications or ramifications of what will come next is definitely not predictable. And I think so. It makes it easy for those smaller business people to just kind of keep in that groove despite themselves.
Yeah, it's very easy to talk your way into things, isn't it, or out of things. But yeah, I mean, also I think going back to what you said earlier, there's quite a lot of people who are in that position who've started that business because they saw something else. I'm like, well, I could do that better.
Yep.
So I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
And then once if you start with that mindset, it's quite difficult, I think, even like years later to shift out of that, to change gears, change lane, direction, whatever metaphor you prefer.
That's right, because if your self-concept gets wound into that way of acting, it sort of co-evolves and reinforces itself, and so you get that sort of tunneling effect. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Right. Well, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent there. Let's bring it back to the work that you're doing today.
Sure.
What would you say is like the one thing about what you do that excites you the most?
Oh my God, one thing. It's difficult to say just one thing. I think the thing that I really enjoy the most is just knowing how much as a younger person, some of those encounters with leadership and people can impact you, so that I get to just, be around and help dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of young people trying to, with help, solve, actual business problems. It's just so much fun because the best in them can come out when you give them tools, support, clarity, and then you get out of the way to watch what they can do. So I think actually the thing that I love the most is really setting the table for the teams in the lab to be successful, and then helping them as they sort of bounce along and bump up against things, get over those barriers. I think that's really what I love the most.
Fair enough. And can you tell us a bit more about some of the projects that they work on, the kind of things that they do?
Yeah, for sure. So the basic genesis of the LEAF Lab was tons and tons and tons of young people are leaving university with just a bare minimum of readiness to do it. I saw recently that in the States last year, almost half of the first year graduates from college and university got fired in their first year. That's a very high number. Suggests that, something's broken somewhere. We have a particular hypothesis about the brokenness and why that's caused, and et cetera. So the lab really exists to take discrete, well-defined problems from small and medium-sized businesses. They give us the work and a small amount of money to just have it worked on, but it's not urgent. So like nothing, the students are not under time pressure to solve the problems. So we take these pieces of work in. We have lots of, university students from the US, from the UK, from Africa, from all around, meeting in distributed teams, as they will often do in the future, to figure out, okay, how do we make some forward progress on this piece of thing? So it might be marketing. It might be a financial analysis. It might be just understanding like market research, a large range of things that small and medium-sized companies need done, but are not front burner projects. And so it's just this very fun way to help young people get what they need on their professional trajectory, learning good habits and good teamwork and sort of self-leadership, frankly, a lot of self-organization. Because if you can teach someone to self-organize and make that safe, that will be useful to them everywhere and anywhere. And so I'm not sure I'm really answering your question, but basically, companies bring us small, discrete bits of work, several months lead time. And then the teams and my business partners and I and the other business coaches, help them in their little, meetings throughout the week. So they learn all these ways of working without lots of lecture. So we kind of live the method.
That's very cool, I have to say. I love the concepts. I think, yeah, I mean, much as I love like the academic style of study, I'm a big reader as well, obviously, and, always reading about leadership as well. And and other things as well, but mostly
Mm.
leadership. But I do feel like there's only so much you can learn by reading a book or an article. You've got to, it's that in practice bit that is so important, at least for me anyway. Maybe I don't know, man. Everyone has their own learning style, don't they? But it's, seeing it done, doing it yourself, that for me has always been when the learning really sticks.
Yes. And I think a lot of young people today are very tentative, uncertain of how to do things. And a lot of them have to feel like they have to be perfect. I can't start because if I'm wrong, that's a catastrophe. And the standard high stakes one test and you're done, like the A levels, screw that up, man, you're effed. Like that is a very bad day for you. That's going to suck for and have problems for, decades to come. It's just insane. It's not a way to take the human capital in any population and really develop it in the way that used to be true, especially in the UK. I mean, the UK was like the global leader in innovation for the 18th and most of the 19th century, I would say. And then something happened such that that's less true now. But there was that sort of tinkering, doing something mentality. If you look at steam, if you look at all these foundational technologies of industrialization developed in the UK, because people wanted to just tinker, do stuff, make an improvement. And yes, it involved the head, but the value to society is when it gets out of your head, hopefully goes past your heart for a minute. So you're thinking about what you're doing and the purpose, but then it has to get out into your hands, into the world. Because again, if half of the college graduates are getting fired in their first year, they're probably smart, but they can't translate that. It's like having a big engine and no transmission in your car. You're not going to go very far. And so that's like, solving that problem or like improving that situation is super fun to be able to work on.
I'm trying to put my finger on the history of that, but there was like the Industrial Revolution. There was, I guess for us, it was the two world wars that kind of killed industry, at least in a lot of ways.
And actually, I was just reading yesterday, I can forward this to you after the show, this wonderful newsletter that I got called, I think it's Construction Physics, and it was specifically about the shipping industry and the shipping industry's decline in the UK. So I can forward that to you. It's a wonderful piece. This guy is just so good because he really is, he's a technologist first and a historian as well. And so it came down to a whole bunch of things. In particular, the UK was making more tonnage of ships than anyone else in 1800. What happened is, as industrial methods, welding and sort of componentizing building came along, the British shipbuilders were like, no, we want to do custom crafts, each one unique. And they just doubled down on that and they got passed. That was a lot of it, was just not accepting that ways of working will change as technology changes. And if you don't keep up, Japan's and Korea are going to start building all those ships because they're going to build cheaper, better ways.
Yeah. I mean, so most of my background is in the aerospace industry. So for that industry, that particular sector, because again, like the UK until even sort of late 40s, early 50s, they were kind of, we led in a lot of innovation.
Spitfire,
a lot of the
the Spitfires were the thing.
Yeah, and like the jet engine and even Rolls-Royce, like what we recognise today as like modern aircraft carriers. All of that they were all British ideas.
Yep.
But it wasn't so much the innovation went away; it was the money to do it. That was our problem after the war, because we were so over leveraged and everything was gone, and we owed so much money to our friends across the pond.
The Marshall Plan was and that's funny too, because like Americans tell the story of like we just helped everybody, and it's like, well, there were some serious strings there. So
there was a lot of back and forth as well, definitely. But certainly took some persuading. It's an interesting one. Like I love that sort of the historical setting. We're going wildly off topic here, aren't we? But
I'm prone to do that. I apologize.
Yeah, me too. But it is interesting to me though, because we're back to kind of the implementation of it and the practical achievement and having the ability and the means to do it. It's about more than just book learning, which I think is where we started before we went down that time.
And again, that's where leaders help with that shift from this is an exciting set of ideas to we're doing something with it. It's a rare human who doesn't feel like, I want to contribute something. I want to make, like, kids don't go to school or go to work thinking like, I want to be a sucky employee or a student. That's a very rare, very, very rare person. And yet schools and organizations are often really adept at bringing out the worst in people because we have these antiquated leadership models that are just not serving us in the digital economy.
Absolutely. I mean, even just simple things like the pattern of hours in the day and what the time you spend working and the time you spend doing other things. And you're so right about what you said earlier about the exam culture as well. I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK, it's pretty
Not good.
like it's. I don't. There's very few people I think who are at their best in that scenario, and I don't. Yeah, and I don't believe that like an exam that 2 hour, even if it's like a really long 2.5 hour one, you're not going to demonstrate depth of learning out of that, and
There's
you're
almost,
not. No, and you're not being encouraged or incentivized to really learn deeply either. It's learn the question, learn the answer to that question, and then stop, move on to the next question. You're not,
which in an older world where knowledge was the bottleneck and just access to knowledge was the bottleneck, maybe made some sense. Super does not make sense anymore. It's just not the environment that we're trying to raise people to be useful in.
This is it. And there's a massive parallel to leadership here. So I mentioned the Industrial Revolution earlier. In a lot of ways, we're still in that mode of thinking in the modern workplace, even though I don't know what the statistics are, like how many people are actually still physically going to a factory every day for work and pressing buttons or turning things on machines. I suspect it's quite a low number though. And yet entire workplaces, office culture, the 9 to 5, like clock in, clock out, all of this kind of presenteeism, all of these tick boxes really that are still seen as like, that's how work works.
It is. And it's so arcane and it's so really just not true anymore.
And it hasn't been true for like 100 years now at this point.
Decades. Yeah. Oh, completely. And it's interesting. I mean, as an undergraduate, I was a history major, but what I was really interested in was economic history and how economic and cultural histories interact. And so to your point about those older ways of working, those older mentalities overriding, culture kind of replicates itself pretty effectively. And when you get that sort of zero-sum mindset and that older managerial mindset, that's just people like they see that, they think, they see it on TV or whatever, and they think, oh, that's what it means to be a boss. I'm supposed to like yell and be a dick. That sort of thing. And it's just silly because it's just not how knowledge works, to your point. It's just not how things get done because it's like 6 or 7, 8% of people are doing that older industrial style thing. And knowledge work is how countries get rich and develop. And knowledge work doesn't work that way. And there's like, to your point, there's just billions of just like so much literature now. And yet leaders can't get over the leadership mindset hurdle to something that is more collaborative, something that is more transparent, something that is more inclusive of getting, all of the people doing the work, into it. It's just incredibly wasteful.
It is, and it's not doing anyone any favors either. That's the real frustration of it for me. Like the leaders themselves aren't benefiting from this. The people they're leading definitely aren't. Yep. The businesses aren't. Yep. Like the businesses are. I mean, they wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't achieving at least to like their minimum required level to stay in business or whatever, or even like make a decent profit sometimes. But I'm convinced that they're missing out. And they could be doing twice as much money and twice as much results and have much happier people and leaders who don't have to work as hard at managing those people because they'll become self-managing because they control their own hours or whatever that might be. And there's at best, it's a huge missed opportunity, I think.
Tremendous. Yeah. And I think it was John Maynard Keynes, probably 110 years ago, wrote this very famous essay about the future and what will we do when we have all this leisure time as machines do more and more of the industrial work. And what we see is, this older mentality keeps us shackled and chained to not very efficient ways of working, not very human-centric ways of working, not very adaptable ways of working. And so to your point, no stakeholders really getting what they could be out of it because we're just tied to these older, outmoded ideas. And it's interesting too, because when you think about, the leaders who make the biggest difference is, last night I watched the Jane Goodall special on Netflix about, it's called Famous Last Words.
Yeah, I
And
haven't seen it. I've heard of it though. It's on my list.
so good. And she's talking about sort of leadership and possibility and all these things that are just out of fashion now. Sort of being a jerk, being punitive, all these things in many corners of our political and corporate world are held up as examples of how to lead. And you're just like, oh my God, it's like we're just like taking the good bits of our culture and just drowning it because it seems weak or it seems something that's not like the usual John Wayne style, leadership, which is, it's incredibly frustrating because you see how much waste of a life, waste of time, waste of money. It's staggering.
Yeah. It's full of so many ironies as well, isn't it? Like,
really, seriously.
I think a lot of these people who are following this sort of old school approach, that's what I would call it anyway, they're doing it because it feels easier. And it feels like to go and just like treat people as humans and get to know them a bit, that's more work in their view. But the irony is it's actually not. Like, it might feel a bit more uncomfortable when you first start doing it, but once you get into it, actually that's just how you, if it wasn't in the workplace setting, that's how you would interact with people anyway. So what's the difference? Like, you're probably going to be better at that than you are at being an arsehole, unless you are just naturally an arsehole, because some people are, but and it's just weird to me.
Well, I think it's interesting. So I was thinking, like, my head is just like, I'm a super nerd. So like my head goes to, well, what would be a rule? Could we come up with a business rule that would make these sort of things easier? And it just completely slipped my head. So maybe it'll come back. But I do think that, with some of these leadership things, there really are, I know what it was. For leadership, if we can just separate out control versus influence. Influence is much less expensive and can be much more fun. You can influence a group in a positive way that doesn't involve people feeling demeaned or made less than. If you have to control everything in that old boss way, you'll put huge resources into controlling something that you could just influence for a lot less cost in other ways. So I think that's, if we could just say, what do you really have to control as a leader and what do you need to influence? We could help tease apart that older way. I think a lot of bosses don't even like being jerks. They just don't know a better way. And they don't have examples. The examples are often not flashy and, cool. But I think the control versus influence, if we could just split that apart, we could do a lot of good in our organizations.
Yeah. I really like that. That's a great way of explaining it as well. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think that's why most managers, bosses, leaders are like this.
Yeah.
Because they don't know another way. So they just do whatever their boss used to do when it was the other way around, right? You just copy and paste into, because if that's the only example you've ever had, like, what else are you supposed to do? It's very, completely understandable, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating.
And doesn't make the cost any less real.
Indeed.
The cost to society, the cost to our health, the cost to any number of things.
Absolutely. Which I guess sort of leads into the next question, which is about organizational agility. Quite relevant there, isn't it? So, I mean, what is it and why does it matter?
Oh my gosh, I love this. So, and I'll just, so as to not go off on a 40-minute tirade about this, I'll just simply say, adaptability, agility, whatever you want to call it, is less important than describing what those things look like in an organization. So organizational agility, business agility, whatever those things are, is to me just kind of a generalized proxy for the culture, the processes within the organization that allow it to sense and respond to its environment, other competitors in the market, changes of customers, those sorts of things. So business agility is internalizing those processes and that mindset so that your organization can simply evolve and maintain its place in the ecosystem that it's currently operating in to, kind of persist over time. So it's sort of like helping yourself get fit for purpose by being able to learn sense the environment and then, operationalize that. I would say in a general term, that's what it is, but that may sound very abstract. We can sort of drill into specific practices that enable that behavior. But it's basically just adaptability to the environment.
Which is a good definition. So the word agile for me in a business setting, having been through a few like agile qualifications and project management, scrum mastering and all that sort of side of things in a past job, I feel like the word agile, for try not to be super unfair to a lot of business owners, but for several business owners that I've worked with over the years, let's leave it at that, is a really misunderstood term. Because the way you've just described it is spot on exactly how I would understand it. It's that responsiveness to whatever the condition is that is relevant. So in an agile software environment, that is the user need. What does the user need this to do? That's what we're going to respond to. Business owners I've worked with and met and encountered over the years, and even things you see on social media and LinkedIn and things like that, see the word agile as like the more dictionary definition, like the word you might associate with, say, I don't know, a lion in the wild,
Precisely.
like agile in terms of moving fast and changing direction quickly. That word quickly is where I get stuck with it, because I'm like, well, why aren't we being agile? It's been 20 minutes and we haven't changed direction yet. No, this isn't what it means. This isn't what it's for.
Yes, exactly. Well, and I think, quite frankly, a lot of the early agile, if this is too much nerd stuff, you can just cut this out of the final version. But I've studied agility from way back, and have had this just incredibly good luck to meet kind of the grand founder of the agility movement named Tom Gilb. And I would happily introduce you to. He would be a wonderful guest. He has a very, very specific method that he's developed since the 70s, in fact, even earlier, to help business leaders, without using the word agility, evolve themselves in a very quantitative, specific way. I think a lot of agility, as it became popular, got really, like the word agile assholes, who would be very dismissive and scornful of other people about various things. And I was on that path, and I had a couple of things kick my butt, and a couple of people who were really just great mentors who were like, listen, buddy, you got to like back up a few steps here. So if I'm working with a leader, I'll often delineate, there's really only one thing happening here, which is the interplay of your social technologies and your physical technologies. As sapiens, what distinguishes us is tools and culture, and moving those things forward over time. So a physical technology, we know what those are. Social technology is much, much harder. Doesn't have weight. A contract is a social technology that was developed years ago that we've now refined in a very specific way. So once you start to see social technology as the enabler of the physical technology, you get this very different world. And so what Tom does is he helps, bring those two things together. So the stuff that I do, the stuff that he does, are really designed to help the social technologies enable the physical technologies. Whereas in the past, a lot of agile was just very revolutionary and said, if you're not estimating story points, if you're not so prescriptive, that it made a lot of organizations allergic to agile because it was so prescriptive and not evolutionary. I'll stop ranting there.
No, you made me cringe there as you gave me a flashback about story points, but
such a waste of time.
Yeah, I think it's parts of it like that where it's intended to be really abstract, I think is that's where people get really stuck with it, I think, quite quickly. I mean, I certainly did at the beginning. And again, like, it's not just agile, but I think anywhere where we're trying to impose process, and it's that word impose, isn't it? And what is driving what, and why are we doing these things? That's the core bit that I think any business owner needs to understand before they do any of these things.
Indeed.
Because again, like, we've probably all worked in a job where there's someone in the room, I've been this person in the past, who says, well, the process says you need to do this, and then this, and then this. And you didn't do that, and you skipped B, and went straight to C, and now you've broken it. We've got to throw all of this away and start again. Even though actually it was probably quicker. B was unnecessary. That's why they skipped it. And the output was just as good, if not better. So, but you get, I had a boss who used to call it the cart before the horse, and I therefore hate that phrase, but I can't think of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, the sequence does matter. I mean, I think that's accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, if we're talking about like innovation and creativity and seeing those things as positive in a business, you can't just like religiously, dogmatically stick to a process just because it's there, whether that is agile or whether it's, I don't know, like your quality control process or whatever that might be. And I think, it's easy to just do that because then nobody has to think, do they? But
right. Well, and again, in times past, you didn't want your people to have to think. The boss had all the answers. Now, knowledge work, that just doesn't work anymore.
Absolutely. And again, like it's harking back to, like, it's not even as far back as the Industrial Revolution, is it? It's like, it's the production line mentality where you want everyone to do the same thing every time in the same order because you're talking about mass production. But mass production thinking doesn't work for small businesses. And 99.9% of the businesses in the UK, in the US, are small businesses.
Indeed.
Right? So, there's a disconnection, isn't there? And it's very perplexing. Oh, there we go, new word.
Yeah, and it is. And it's perplexing because it's ineffective and seems to be durable. And you're just like, what's going on here?
Yeah. You got to laugh, though, because otherwise you cry.
Yeah.
So I'm going to skip a couple of questions because I think we've covered quite a few of these points anyway, and I've just got an eye on the time. So as leaders then in these kind of situations, these kind of businesses, what can we do? How can we make work easier for our teams?
Yeah. I mean, I think thing number one is just as a leader to try to get better as a servant leader. Lots of books about it, not hard to do. Servant leadership is really the thing. I think the other thing, and this is really to your point, is just invest in leadership in the way that you would invest in IT. Because human capital will, if you're undercapitalized, will kill you as much as being under fiscally capitalized. And so it would be servant leader, embrace change. It's not going to go away. And then find friends who you trust to be a real thought partner. I mean, I love shows like yours. I love there's so much out there now for aspiring leaders that, I think in many ways there's never been a time to upgrade oneself. And so much of the sort of fear-based, just rush for the quarterly reports, rush for that sort of stuff, unfortunately still drives so much of what's going on.
Yeah, I think for me it's about value, isn't it? And that's like value for the business, but value for you as the individual as well. Like if you're not, if there's no value for you in just showing up and doing a report that, to be honest, ChatGPT could probably do for you, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Then why do it? Go and find something else where there's a bit of purpose behind it that you can identify with.
So actually, if I would add, based on that, I would add David's rule, which is value from the beginning, value in the middle, and value in the end. If you can just do nothing but that, stakeholders and value, you can't go that far wrong as long as you can remain flexible about how you might solve for those different stakeholders and needs and whatnot.
Absolutely. So if you had to narrow down the biggest leadership lesson you've learned from your whole career so far, what would it be?
Ask for help when you don't know what to do. Your pride will kill you. My pride almost killed me. Don't do that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a story behind that. But
There is. And the story is I didn't ask for help at a time when I needed it. There were resources available. I had this old idea about, like the heroic, I'll do this on my own. And it was just really stupid. It was dumb. It was juvenile. It was not adult. It was not, yeah.
I think when I ask people about leadership myths, this is the one that comes up the most. And I think it's probably my top one is about this idea that we all seem to have. And it probably goes back to everything we've been talking about so far, doesn't it, as to where it comes from. But we perceive leaders as the one with the answers.
That's it.
And so when you are the leader, what that means to you is I can't ask for help. I
Yes.
have to have the answer. I don't know what the answer is. I'll come up with an answer. That'll do.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes. That's it. I mean, I think you put your finger on it. When I find a leader who likes physics, what I'll often do with them is say, "Oh, hey, have you heard about the 3-body problem?" If they haven't, we'll talk about the 3-body problem. And then I'll say, okay, now let's look at a system. Let's look at any of your systems. Does it have 3 parts? Are those parts nonlinear ever? Then let's stop trying to predict the future, because the 3-body problem says we can't do that. Let's slow down, take these things apart, talk to people. It's a lot of it is like that old Toyota kata mentality of it's the people. Respect the people doing the work. Get clear about where you're trying to go. It's not magic, but it requires humility, and that is a dilemma, because how do you have authority as a leader? It's like, well, people have to trust me, so I have to show something, especially if you're younger and you're starting out. So everything kind of tends to run you in the wrong way. And that's where I think older mentors, leadership shows like this, let people say, oh, this is not weakness. This is actually the smart way. This is how stuff gets done now. That feels sustainable, that is focused on value, that because the cognition required to lead at that level, it's just one brain can't do it anymore. It's beyond what a brain can do. And I think leadership is, oddly enough, a team sport, and too many people think it's not.
Absolutely. I think, not just in this kind of the day and age we're in now, and how fast everything moves and how much information there is, how much data there is. It's not all information, is it? But access to all of that, and I think this myth, I think, is like the underlying reason for why burnout is on the rise, because as all of these things change and accelerate and get bigger and more and always on all the time, if you're trying to stick to and live by that myth of leadership where you know all the things, there's a rapidly approaching bottleneck crash point where those two opposing facts meet and you burn out, or worse.
Yep.
And I don't know what the answer to that is, other than just persuade people they don't have to have all the answers, which feels like an uphill battle of its own, doesn't it?
It's not easy. Whatever it is, it's not easy. And I think actually a lot of it will be just at a one-to-one relationship basis. Hey, listen to this show about leadership with integrity. Hey, read this book about the no assholes rule by this professor at Stanford. Just so many ways to sort of break that thinking down and show it as just antiquated. If we were alive 500 years ago, we would have been certain that the sun moved around us. Didn't mean people were assholes or dumb. They just didn't have the right things. They hadn't done the observations to develop the theory. We've done a lot of that now. Let's keep up with that. And so I think, in terms of leaders, for the leader who's more science-minded, you can bring them leadership science. For the leader who's more touchy-feely, you can bring them things that work with them. I think, another thing about leadership is it's like anything. To find one's own voice as a leader will take time and experimentation. Letting that be okay is important. And, helping your boss understand these things in a way that doesn't make them feel bad, would be the thing that anyone who is, wants to move up into leadership should do. Just learn, stay curious, you'll do better, would be the other thing.
Oh yeah, 100%. Having made a massive deal earlier about ask for help, at the same time, you've got to find that balance between like it being okay to get things wrong occasionally and learn by doing a little bit. Again, it's back to what we talked about around like practical learning, isn't it? Learn by doing, literally. Like sometimes and it's really difficult in the moment to know the difference between, do I need to go and try it and figure it out on my own, or should I ask for help?
That's right.
Yes. It's a challenging one, not just for leadership. I think just anything you're trying to learn in life, to be honest.
To me, it's one of the dilemmas of modernity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess alongside that is the other big dilemma, isn't it, these days, of just because you go and try and find the answer doesn't mean it'll be the right one.
That's right. And even if it's right now, it may not be right next year.
Well, yeah, quite. Because there's so many answers available now, aren't there? Like everywhere you look. Google it on your phone. Like, yeah, it's a tough one. I don't want to get into ChatGPT and LLMs and AI because I always rant about this.
Right. Yeah.
So I think we've probably covered the mistakes that leaders make. I'm going to skip that one. I think we've talked about that enough. I love the answers I always get to this question, though. So I'm going to ask you this one. What is your best memory of being led?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. My best memory of being led. Whew. I'm doing sorting in my head of several different things to think of what the best one might be. Boy, I think one of the best examples of being led, this is maybe a bit cheesy, was just my dad. And I remember as a young boy, my brother and I being shown how to lead by him in how he lived his life. So that's not a specific moment, but it was the moments where I saw him in public, holding an audience, in public, doing whatever. Those moments where I was like proud of my dad, but also feeling like, oh, I can do this too. I'm not going to be better than him, but it's like, it was a thing where like he made space to feel like you could get into that thing. And so that leadership was not, being subjugated. I experienced leadership as something that let you then grow. And that was that feeling of being led into something better. That was just marvelous.
That's a pretty unique answer, I think. A lot of people answer a parent for the later question we haven't got to yet. And I don't always ask this one, so it's difficult to draw a trend. But yeah, I don't think anyone's answered with a parent for this one before, so that's really interesting. And
my dad was unusual. I mean, my parents were small business people. He was not a normal person in a lot of ways, so it would be not surprising that most people don't have dads like that.
Yeah, but I mean, who is a normal person? Nobody I know.
I'm not on that list.
Nobody I know, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's a great example, and yeah, thank you for sharing that story. So I only have difficult questions left now, I'm afraid.
Brilliant.
There's only 2 of them though, so hopefully you'll be all right. First one then. If you could go back in time, ignoring the physics of it, but if you could go back in time to the start of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Ask for help. Don't be proud.
It's too easy, that one, wasn't it? Yeah. We've already answered it. Oh.
But it took years. I mean, it took years. It took years because, again, as a smart kid in school, you're told, just be smart. Be smart. And as we know about fixed and growth mindset, that is not, right? That's just not good advice anymore. And so I would go back and say, growth mindset is a thing. Like I was trained and believed that growth mindset was what you got. You were smart or not. You were, and it was just that very sort of binary, reductive way of seeing what a person can grow into.
I'm going to hate myself for saying this, but there's different kinds of smart, aren't there? Like
there are. I mean, it's fundamentally true. Just go look at 2 different parents. They're going to be like, look at any 2 people. They're going to have intelligences that are non-identical. They'll have a lot that overlap, but it's going to be non-identical, just as a basic fact.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Like at school, the smart was defined in a very specific way, wasn't it? And anyone who didn't fit in that, you probably felt pretty bad about themselves quite a lot of the time at school.
Mm-hmm. Or if you thought you were the smart kid and you did badly on a test, you were like, what's wrong with me? This is challenging my sense of who I am.
Yeah, and the pressure of it as well. Again, like we don't have time to get into this. We've already taken apart the workplace, haven't we? But there's something about education, isn't there, and the way it's done, at least in the Western world.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. This is my favorite one. And I hope that you haven't preempted it with your answer to a different question earlier, but this is leadership heroes.
Leadership heroes.
So if you could pick one person, but it could be literally anyone you could think of. They could be like alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious, but someone who, in your opinion, perfectly embodies leadership. Who would that person be for you and why?
So that person for me in my professional career would have been a man named Bruce Cole. He was the principal of my elementary school. And he was one of those people who was, as an adult, I realized very ADD, just again, not a normal person, but what he did for that school was to make exploration safe, to make not knowing the answer safe, to make just enthusiasm safe. Like you could be a nerd there and no one was going to beat you up. He was just his force of presence was so strong that you just looked up to him. He was like magnetic. Although he was not the lead from the front kind of guy. So I think, he was really the exemplar par excellence of modern leadership, who was also totally self-taught. Like there was no big manual. There was no big theory behind what he was doing. It just made sense to him. So he had that sort of intuitive sense for how to lead with integrity and lead through inspiration, perspiration, and, accident, and that was okay. Not being perfect was okay. So it would be Bruce Cole, and he's like he's very old now. But he was my guy. He was the guy who I wanted to be when I grew up, and kind of still do.
That's kind of cool. It harks back to what we said right at the beginning, doesn't it, about teachers being the leaders in our lives and things. And clearly inspired you, given what you've got on to do with the rest of your career. And the results obviously speak for themselves, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he must be memorable if he's stuck in your mind for this long as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I still see him. I mean, he lives an hour away, and I'll still see him periodically, and he doesn't always remember me, but it's just so nice to be in his presence again.
Enough. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, he probably had many, many, many students over the years.
Thousands.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's such a lovely example. I'm not sure anyone's given a teacher that they've had as an answer to this question before. You might get like extra bonus points for that answer. So
I have to credit you, David. It was your idea. You pointed it at the top of the show, so I'm just riding your coattails.
Yeah, we'll have half each. Yeah. Amazing. Well, Simon, I've loved this conversation, especially all the random tangents we've gone off on. They're always the most interesting, I find. If anyone in the audience, I'm sure all of them would like to learn more about you and what you do, where can they go to learn more? What's the addresses?
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn. Thank you. LinkedIn would be the very easy way. Okay. I have an unusual name. There aren't too many of me. So if you go to LinkedIn, and you'll see that there. Although if you see me on LinkedIn, you'll actually see I have a little logo there instead of my face for my company. So if you see a little gold 3-leafed insignia, then you'll know you're in the right place. I'm also I respond to every message. I'm busy, but I love helping people. So any of your guests who reach out, and literally there's no question that would be annoying to me. Anything at all, would love to chat. Either like super theory nerd stuff, or like my father-in-law is driving me crazy. How do I get him to blah, blah, blah? Any of those things.
Amazing. Excellent directions there as well. I'm sure everyone will find it easily, but I will put the link in the show notes anyway, just in case.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, Simon, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been great, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Simon, thank you for your time. Great conversation. And I have to say, Leaf Labs sounds like a really good and important initiative. Thoroughly applaud and support the work that you're doing there in supporting young people as they enter the workplace and start struggling with things like leadership, for example. Listener or viewer, if you would like to learn more about Simon, perhaps look into Leaf Labs, among other things. You will find all of those links down in the show notes, his website, his LinkedIn page, and more. So as always, I encourage you, visit those links, learn more about the guest, dive a bit deeper into his expertise. And listener, if you are a new leader, a first-time manager, perhaps you've just started your own business, or you're hiring people for the first time, but you don't know where to start. You're struggling with confidence as a leader. You're having those nasty imposter feelings that you feel like they're always creeping up behind you. Then come and join my community for leaders just like you. It's called Integrity Leaders. It is 100% online. It exists to offer support, guidance, knowledge, resources, clarity to new or struggling leaders just like you. If you're not sure whether that's for you, if you're not even sure you'd call yourself a leader and you'd like to learn more, then you can, of course, visit the website, click that green button on the homepage, watch a little video of me as I talk a bit more about the community, or you can pay a visit to my LinkedIn profile, connect with me, drop me a message, and let's have a conversation instead, or as well. Up to you. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us again. I know Christmas week is busy and hectic for a lot of people, so I appreciate you taking the time. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas tomorrow if Christmas is your thing. And if it's not, I hope you just have a good day, a nice day, a relaxed day, a day free of stress. The Christmas special is out tomorrow. It's already scheduled. So after I stop recording this, that's it for me until next week. I've planned ahead for a change. Not for a change. I always plan ahead. It's the execution that sometimes lets me down. But anyway, it's all done. It's ready. It's there. It's going to be going live tomorrow morning at the usual time, 08:30 UK time. I hope you'll enjoy that one. It is a bit silly, but we do also have some serious leadership lessons in there as well, I hope. So yeah, give that a go. And then, of course, there's the Boxing Day clip show on Friday as well, where we will sum up some of the favourite moments from this year on Leading with Integrity. I'll be back next week with usual weekly service on Wednesday, which also happens to be New Year's Eve. So you'll be getting an episode as normal with my next guest, Maritza, and also the New Year special as well. So 2 episodes next Wednesday. That's all from me today. Thanks for being with us this week. And as usual, be a leader, not a boss.